This is Command Post, a series of discussions about military matters from Time and the Center for a New American Security.
Brian, we've been involved in Afghanistan for more than a decade at this point. We've invested enormous sums into the country, lots and lots of lives. Your friends, my friends, have suffered there, fought there, worked there. What are we gaining for all that? What is Afghanistan going to look like 10 years from now, and what will its relationship with the United States look like at that point?
I think Afghanistan has been part of a broader campaign to defeat the al-Qaeda terrorist network, and I think we've made substantial strides in the last 3 years. I think there's a sense of a light at the end of the tunnel, if only because the security situation has got to the point where al-Qaeda does not necessarily have a safe haven inside of Afghanistan. And what will Afghanistan look like 10 years from now? I think best case scenario, it is integrated within its region. It won't survive if in some sort of way there isn't a regional framework that helps connect it with the rest of the world. In terms of governance, we don't have the grandiose visions of a democratic political system in Afghanistan, but I hope we don't drop that completely, because I actually think in my visits, especially with those working in human rights organizations and NGOs in Afghanistan, there's a new generation that doesn't want to go back to the dark ages.
Steve, do you see a long-term American commitment to Afghanistan?
I think the question of whether we're going to get one depends on the details of how the current negotiations over the Strategic Partnership Agreement pan out. But there's only so much they can do unless we get a more consistent message from Washington about what we're after, both what we're willing to do for you, Mr. Karzai, if you reform, and what we're willing to withdraw from you if you don't.
And why are we making this investment? What are we trying to get from Afghanistan over the long term?
Our primary reason to care about Afghanistan in the long term is because we do not want state collapse in Pakistan, under which that nuclear arsenal could breach containment, and who knows how many militant organizations who dislike us and harbor fond hopes of taking on the distant enemy in addition to dealing with local problems might get their hands on one of them. Afghanistan, unlike the way many Americans think of it, has not for its history been a chronic maelstrom of misgoverned chaos. Afghanistan was stably governed and at peace for most of the 20th century. But when it was stably governed and at peace, it was also the recipient of substantial outside assistance and substantial outside political influence that helped keep it stable. In the future, it's going to have to continue to come from somewhere outside the region, and it's hard to imagine that happening without some kind of meaningful U.S. role.
Okay, but I'm always trying to figure out a yardstick for progress in Afghanistan.
There has been progress, but in a complicated environment in which some things are getting better, some things are getting worse, and it's hard to net out.
There's a real danger in measuring progress according to the inputs that we're putting into a place as opposed to the outcomes. And then there's also a risk of defining the outcomes too broadly, because sometimes we get away from what is in the U.S. national strategic interests. And I'm struck by the fact that we are 10 years past 9/11. And we've prosecuted wars in multiple places. We still have no overall metric that measures resources and matches them to threats. And that's a worry that I've had for a long time. We know, just anecdotally from great journalists reporting around the world, that the threat posed by terrorist networks has migrated, it's morphed, and it's changed. You look at a place like Yemen. Are we committing the resources and thinking through how to deal with these complicated security dynamics? Because my worry is that we're overinvested in certain places and our portfolio isn't balanced, and we still have no clear metrics to really figure out how to apply resources to meet those threats.